dang, man, I don't understand what all that drama about Joker Folie à Deux was about. I thought that was a great movie. But damn, Krazy House with Nick Frost and Alicia Silverstone makes Joker Folie à Deux look like a fucking Princess Bride. If you want to see a crazy movie that'll take some of the nose hairs out of your nose, Krazy House will do the job. That's all I'm gonna say. Forget all the drama. Go watch Krazy House on Amazon Prime. I can't believe Nick Frost goes crazy. He goes crazy. He wants to kill them all. Kill them all. So you gotta watch Krazy House with Nick Frost and Alicia Silverstone. For you '90s kids who know '90s sitcoms like Married with Children, you are in for a treat. It's a crazy house, mate. Gut reaction. Aloha nerds, and welcome back to the Salwog's White's Great Gut Reaction, where I watch things and react from the gut. I just saw Krazy House. Wow. Wow. That movie. Wow. Okay. I came upon Krazy House because I watch Fat Man Beyond and sometimes Smodcast. And Kevin Smith had a Q&A for Krazy House because he had a screening at his theater that he purchased in his hometown. And just, it's Nick Frost, the new Nick Frost movie. I was curious what's going on. Literally, the title was interesting. And a lot of this movie was, a good portions of this movie were spoiled through this Q&A. But from the descriptions of the movie, and the filmmakers were there, or at least one of the directors was there, based on the descriptions as they were describing it, it was the craziest thing since Tusk, or I'd say since Hot Fuzz. That's the only thing I can compare this movie to. So I heard about it through this Q&A video, which they didn't spoil too much, but they spoiled a couple of big moments that I was anticipating as I was watching the movie. And I'm in shock. I am in shock from watching this movie now. I've just watched it and wow, you know what I mean? I know there's just this hot controversy over Joker Folie à Deux, but I think all of you people who didn't like that, maybe you should watch Krazy House on Amazon Prime with Nick Frost. You'll get some special experience there. I promise you, it's something. I don't. Oh my god, just shock. I'm just in pure shock at what I watched. This. I almost didn't want to record this because I'm so dumbfounded. I was just like, maybe I should wait until I have words. I don't have words. I don't have words for what I just saw. I felt like this is the happy version of Cannibal Holocaust. A friend of mine showed me Cannibal Holocaust, and that was the craziest thing I'd ever seen at the time. Blowing Tusk way out of the water. That's a movie from the 70s. It's available on YouTube. About a documentary film crew that discovers what do you call it? One of those the undiscovered Amazon people and they end up causing some drama. And it's, on the one hand, I think it is a beautiful, amazing film that every filmmaker should watch. I think it'll really teach you how to do your job. You know what I mean? In terms of creating relatable characters, and but also having a story that is both exciting to watch in that found footage kind of way. It's like a precursor. I mean, I don't know how far back found footage goes, but this is a kind of, it's partially a found footage film. And so you got these relatable characters. It seems human. It seems documentary-like for chunks of the movie. And at the same time, all these horrific things happen in the movie that are pretty detestable. One of those being the killing of a tortoise. And this movie got in a lot of trouble at the time for the things that happened in it. And yet at the same time, if you're watching the movie, if you're paying enough attention to it, the messages the movie is trying to convey to us as a society are pretty clear. It's, in essence, it's a genuinely great film in terms of how deep of a message it has, as well as how well its story is told. You know, it is a great story, well told. But geez, it's like I said, the offensive nature, the shock of things that happen make me angry that I saw it. So that's Cannibal Holocaust that I was just talking about. So Krazy House, I like to think of as the happy version. I'm happy that I've seen it. But boy, do I not know how to pitch this movie to you. Okay, no, I do. It's just, such things happen in this movie. It's just, watching it is such a wild ride from beginning to end. Okay, let me try to gather myself. Okay, so Krazy House. For those of you who don't know what the hell I'm talking about, that has clearly rocked the words out of me. Krazy House is about a sitcom family, a 90s sitcom family, sort of in the vein of Married with Children and a bunch of other sitcoms that I remember but I couldn't name right now. It's totally, the movie begins, at least in terms of its presentation, like a sitcom. You got an audience watching and laughing, and you got a main character who's very aloof, played by Nick Frost. His name is Bernie Christian, and he's a Christian, and he's a Texan. And his family consists of the working wife, because he's a stay-at-home dad, I guess. Alicia Silverstone plays the working wife. And you got the two kids who, you got a kind of a Doogie Howser type. And what begins as kind of a nerdy looking girl who turns herself into Christina Applegate's character. I'm forgetting her name right now, from Married with Children. She turns herself into that at a certain point. You know, the Married with Children jokes I caught right away. I kind of wish they had just slipped just one hand into the pants, you know what I mean? That sounds wrong, but if you've seen Married with Children, you know what I'm talking about. The Al Bundy move. It just means I'm done for the day. I'm ready to relax. You know, I wish they'd slipped one of those, but that's okay. But Nick Frost was great. The cast was great. Alicia Silverstone was awesome. Our antagonists, these Russian workers who appear, they're fantastic. Everyone looks fairly recognizable in this movie, except for a few of the cast members. Whether I know them or not, I don't know, but they look like people I should recognize. But slowly, these Russian workers who Nick Frost's character hires, they seem to be up to no good. And the movie being called Krazy House, crazy with a K, just like Jessica with a K from another show, but Krazy House with a K, Slowly things get very unhinged in this house, and it's a movie about breaking the positive pacifist Christian nature of Bernie Christian. He's he's so positive and aloof that he's essentially allowing these workers to take advantage of his home. And slowly, as things go on, they get wilder and wilder. And I would say it's not really so insane until the last 20 minutes when a few things happen that, although there's certain little cool edits that suggest they're to come, the experience of it is definitely not spoiled by the editing or even the trailer. I did see the trailer, and the trailer, it did hide the trailer censored itself, which made me want to watch this movie. I was like, wow, the trailer is censoring itself. What could possibly be happening in this movie? Oh yeah. And one of the things that was in the Q&A about something that Nick Frost has to do was like, Nick Frost described reading 10 pages of the script and just being in for the ride until he would get an email from the director saying, you know, you have to do this, right? That doesn't bother you? And then he went, I have to do what? I have to do what with what? And then he was like, okay, maybe I should read this script. I mean, because he was just in. He could tell he liked it, and he was just in. So all these things the directors rightfully checked with him, like, are you sure you're comfortable with this? And Nick Frost would be like, oh, you know, this is a bit much, but at the same time, I'm down. You know what I mean? Nick Frost, just his reactions to what he was doing, I was like, oh, okay. Because they didn't really describe exactly what he did. So seeing what Nick Frost does at the end of this movie, I think they do earn the entire second half of this movie. They earn the title Krazy House. It's not like House of a Thousand Corpses, but it will still shock you. It will still shock you, but I would say in a positive way. It tackles issues such as drugs and teen pregnancy, just like a real sitcom. And then it does other things with those ideas that a normal sitcom wouldn't do. And if you stick to the end of the credits, you'll just see it's not like anything more shocking than what happened earlier, but just a continuation of where this not sitcom is going. I was pleasantly surprised with this movie. It was wild in I would say in a pretty even way, actually. I don't think it was like so shocking until the end of the movie. But just the way it unfolds, the weird lines, the weird stretch of what this family puts up with these Russian workers. Because I don't want to spoil it. I think, yeah, talk about going to this one with an open mind. Oh man, I don't know. The movie hit the credits, and I was like, this makes Joker look like a PG-13 movie. Joker looks like a family-friendly film compared to this, and yet this film is literally on at least on its surface, a movie about a family. Oh God, wow. It's the things that happen. Oh man, oh. So that's my gut reaction on Krazy House. I don't know if I'm going to do spoilers. If spoilers happen, then I did it. If not, go watch it and let me know in the comments what you think of this movie. Like I said, I watched Cannibal Holocaust. It was shocking. It was a great film, but it was so shocking it made me angry that I saw it. I was angry that I saw it for some time, but nonetheless could not deny what a great film it truly was, considering the meaning that it had to say. On the other hand, with Krazy House, it's a really fun time because of the whole sitcom angle, But it is also just so wild, and then the things that happen at the end are so shocking. But I leave it in a positive way. I'm not angry. I'm happy that I saw this movie. I just don't know how to, you got to be in a weird mood. Let me just say, um, it's an odd movie. A lot of crazy stuff happens, and you got to be in the mood for it. Let's just say that. Make sure you eat. If you like, if whatever you like to do to have a pleasant experience with a movie, please have yourself popcorn, candy, have it prepared. It's a wild movie. If you're in for a wild movie that is quite unusual, Krazy House is for you. And it's Nick Frost. So, like I say, I would say this is like Hot Fuzz, except a little bit slower. But the craziness of the last 20 minutes of Hot Fuzz, that's kind of what this movie gets. It gets this, although that was action packed. This is sitcom, something. Okay, whatever category it is, crime story. I don't know exactly how to classify it. Sitcom, crime story, merging, genre mashing. Bernie Christian has some kind of demon talking to him, but it's himself. I don't know what the hell to describe that as. Wow. Okay. That's the best I can do. I am recommending it, but you gotta be in the mood for a crazy, weird movie. Okay? And that's all I can say. I enjoyed Krazy House. I think the filmmakers did a great job at making what they were trying to make. And also, I did see the trailer for their upcoming film Getaway, and I'm very excited for that. That seems like a bit more of a straightforward type of movie, but seems like a similar sense of humor to what was going on. A bit more subtle, maybe, but there's something about it that seems a bit humorous in the premise of that movie. So, yeah, we'll see how this goes. Let me know if you see Krazy House, if you liked it. I hope you don't feel like it's a waste of your money if you don't like it, because it is bizarre. But the audience from the Q&A seemed really excited about it. Nick Frost seemed like he was very proud about it. And just the fact that they'd already made another movie by the time this Q&A was happening, made me very curious. Well, what the heck's this movie about? Because the Q&A only spoiled a couple big things, but it really, somehow the way the audience talked about things, maybe they were also in shock as well, where they just did not quite, they just didn't quite spoil it. They asked questions, or maybe just because I didn't know the context, maybe those questions just didn't have any meaning to me, because I really couldn't wrap my head around what they were asking. One way or the other, I'll put the link to the Q&A below. It's a fun video to watch. Yeah, so that's my recommendation. It's definitely a positive recommendation for Krazy House. And good luck if you choose to watch it. Good luck. And if you don't like it, I apologize. It's very bizarre, but it's also very fun. Like I said, I was happy. And then if you like the movie, stick through the credits, because just the way the credits come to the end, there's just a little moment that happens. It's not big, but I think it's kind of funny. It's worth sitting through the credits for. So that's what I got to say. Thanks for watching. If there's credits, if there's spoilers ahead, then God help us all. All right. Thank you very much for watching. Aloha. Okay, I have had some time to think about it, and I do want to discuss spoilers for Krazy House with you guys, because it is truly nuts. Wow, I needed like a day to digest that. That was a very crazy movie, true to its name. But let's just talk about, for those of you who have seen Krazy House, now you know how nuts it is. But, okay, I'm just going to talk about the things I like, talking about it from a technical standpoint, maybe. I love how the first, 35, 40 minutes of this movie is all in that sitcom view, but then sort of what's interesting is that all these jokes at first it's kind of, it seems like it's intentionally not funny. It's not really making me laugh at first. We have this terrible Texas accent coming from Nick Frost, and he's a klutz. That's his funny character trait, and he keeps doing things worse and worse and worse. And then he falls over, and none of it's really working on me. But every now and then, when someone says something that kind of offends him or hits him personally, we get these little fuzzy edits, like things are kind of, something's going on, So there's little fuzzy edits that I can't remember if they take up the whole screen or not, but they're the little hints that, okay, this world is more off than it appears to be. And then once the Russians won't leave, and the wife is truly starting to lose respect for Nick Frost, Alicia Silverstone's great. I can't believe how well she played both the sitcom mom and then the later on the what do you call it, Stockholm syndrome mom trying to hook up with the older Russian guy. That was nuts. I really just did not see, because it was actually in the entire family kind of experienced Stockholm syndrome, which was fascinating. And a lot of it just because Nick Frost just kept rolling over. He kept letting these people do whatever they want, and his insecurity was bigger than anything. And it was sad to watch his family just lose utter respect for him across the film. But essentially, once we hit a certain point where the tension's rising and he really should be pushing the Russians out of his house, then we go into cinematic mode, which I liked a lot. And I want to discuss this because this is, again, the goal of my show is to celebrate the filmmaking whenever possible, or the human side if I have something human to say. But the shift in language, right? I really love how that's what you call film language when you're on a live sitcom show, especially circa 80s, 90s. You have these much wider shots, these very wide shots. That's a type of language. You come to understand it instinctually as an audience member, that there's that huge difference between that 4:3 screen where it's all kind of wide, everything's kind of easy to look at, very warm color palette, bringing you into the screen, but also the distance kind of giving you that space to see everything as a kind of joke. And then once we go into sort of cinema mode, now we're into tighter close-ups. We're closer on Nick Frost than ever before. And what I think is beautiful is anytime he gets truly offended, when we get these little intercuts of kill them all, when he speaks in his natural British accent, and he's just doing this it is kind of terrifying sounding. I got such a kick out of that. But I love the film language shift. I think that's something to pay attention to. This is, again, I saw this because of the sort of screening Q&A video on Kevin Smith's YouTube channel, where he screened it at his Smodcastle cinemas. Which, man, now I wish I was in the position to go over there and see these special screenings. I had one of those opportunities back in Academy of Art University when I was a student, and I was just always shooting something. I was always editing something. I was always busy, and I was never able to actually get out to some of the special screenings where directors would be there. And actually, there was one time I did get out, and I had the opportunity to meet the director of the 1978 Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and I choked, and I didn't stand up and say, "Hey, I love your movie. It's one of my favorites." That's the story of my life, choking in the moment of greatest importance. But anyway, that screening Q&A, they talk about all these things, and I feel like maybe my brain just couldn't accept some of the things that they were saying, because it was just so even though so much of this movie was spoiled, I could not have expected the experience of it to be what it was. But I really love those intercuts with the natural British accent, where it's very creepy. Kill them all. Mixed with his Texan accent, which sounds like a bad impression, kind of. But that film language shift, bring it back to Kevin Smith, that's sort of what he did, what Kevin Smith did back when he made Tusk back in 2014. Again, this movie, Tusk, that I bring up almost as often as Star Wars, there's a movie where we kind of have what seems like a straightforward comedy, maybe, we're not quite sure, comedy or drama. We have a very straightforward kind of movie with Justin Long's character walking into a horror situation, and it's only after he first meets this sort of kooky stranger at his home in the middle of nowhere, and things start getting, Blumhouse creepy. It's only after that, his first kind of knockout, that we cut to a close-up of Genesis Rodriguez, and she's talking to someone, and she has this whole beautiful monologue it's a tragic monologue about kind of the fall of Justin Long's character, how he used to be so sweet, and now he's just become this very vain, self-involved cheater. She knows that he's cheating because he comes up with excuses for why he can't go with her on journeys, that somehow has something to do with the best friend. Very, very bullshitty excuses for why he's actually cheating on her. And that's a genre shift, within the movie. And the movie kind of cuts back and forth between this very sort of bizarre horror movie of Justin Long being turned into a walrus, and this very straightforward kind of drama story of his girlfriend and his best friend / co-podcaster, who are they're just kind of at their wits' end with him. They're sick of how he's transformed. They don't even know he's being transformed even further from an asshole to a walrus. But those genre shifts, I thought, that's part of what makes Tusk really impressive, because it can shift these genres, and yet the movie is still going. You know what I mean? And there's something to say that, hey, horror movies do have drama sometimes. But I've just got this very distinct feeling when we were on Genesis Rodriguez. No, this is a drama scene. This is a dramatic scene. It's a dramatic speech. This is not... You don't always get this in horror. Horror movies, whether they're slow burns or whether they're, chasing you around, are really more about setting up the premise most of the time, and don't always have a kind of dramatic edge like that. So I thought it was very beautiful that, the very first half of Tusk is a back and forth between a mundane relationship drama, which, not to say, Kevin Smith's movies are mundane in the ire of mediocre, just that, it's regular life, right? Mundane meaning regular life. The first half of Tusk goes back and forth between this bizarre horror, this bizarre body horror, almost of the vein of The Fly, something like that. So we have this intercutting in the first half between body horror and mundane drama, and then the second half, which introduces Guy Lapointe, who is a surprise cast member. If you haven't seen Tusk, I'm not going to say who that cast member is. You just better go watch it and find out for yourself. But when Detective Guy Lapointe appears, all of a sudden the movie becomes a body horror that has this kind of comedic irony to it, intercut with the detective bringing Genesis Rodriguez and Haley Joel Osment, the Justin Long's only real close connections in this movie. The second half is this kind of comedic detective movie where they're trying to get closer and closer to what's happened to Justin Long. So it's a very bizarre juxtaposition of genres and film languages, because again, film language shifts based on your genre, based on your medium. It's very, very different. So what having Tusk in mind, when Krazy House is doing these film language shifts from the sitcom television look to now the cinema look, and not only that, but these still, even when we're in cinema mode, getting these very bizarre fuzzy intercuts showing us that we're just getting closer and closer to Nick Frost, and whatever it is his problem is, that's why he can't stand up to these Russian we've come to realize the Russian criminals, not workers, that keep tearing apart his house, and no matter what racket they cause, what destruction they cause, he doesn't stop them. And then even to the point where it's an old man and his sons, and both sons end up befriending both of Nick Frost and Alicia Silverstone's kids. So one son has a romantic relationship with the daughter, and the other son becomes a junkie with the other Russian son. And they're partly doing this because they just feel so trapped by the insecure. What I think is funny about Nick Frost's character is I just felt like he's Ned Flanders. If Ned Flanders was replaced Al in Married with Children, I feel like that's kind of what we're experiencing. He's just so positive, but also an absolute pushover. I don't know if Ned Flanders was a 100% pushover, because I don't remember The Simpsons. I haven't watched it since I was a kid. But that kind of vibe of like this unyielding Christian with these unyielding good language values, who's so unyielding that he won't stand up to people who are endangering his family. And that vulnerability and weakness is really what drives his family away from him, and sort of creates a Stockholm syndrome where actually his family would prefer the tougher, gruffer Russians over putting up with the insecurity, the pious insecurity of Bernie Christian, Nick Frost's character. So the film language shifts, indicating how we are getting closer to Nick Frost, and uncovering what exactly his issue is. And we learn that it really is piety. It's kind of a Book of Job type of situation. I saw this video on YouTube not too long ago where this I forget the YouTuber's name, but essentially he would look at movies or shows and sort of examine the religious angle of it. Or maybe he was just explaining religious stories. I don't know. But he talked about the Book of Job, and how the Book of Job was about how Job was a pious man, but there was a bet between God and the devil as to whether or not his piety was sincere. And so God allowed the devil to torment this man and kill his family and take everything from him. And the man never yielded in his faith. And so I could see that was sort of what was going on. Literally, that's a conversation with Nick Frost and Jesus Christ, which I gotta say, when Jesus Christ appears, again, this is a reason that the film language shifts, because you couldn't quite effectively show the Jesus Christ thing in the sitcom world. So when Jesus Christ appears, and it's magical and it's beautiful, and he just has such a dude quality about him where I'm not quite sure. I'm like, I don't know if you're the real Jesus Christ. Yeah, dude. He's way too relaxed. He's like, I'm here for you, man. And it's just motivation for Nick Frost to just stay pious and sweet and just not stick up for his family and stick up against these Russian thugs. And it's not until literally the family gives up on him and he ends up, and the Russians, I can't remember, does he start sticking up for himself? Either way, the Russians at a certain point nail him to a cross. I'm like, where'd the cross come from? And at that point, you see him looking at his family being quite comfortable with the Russians, and even Alicia Silverstone getting passionately attracted to the Russian father. And man, it is so bizarre to watch a voluntary Stockholm syndrome story, just because the father is so weak. It's such a weak spine. But then to see it all finally build into his head, and he finally goes crazy. And maybe it's not as crazy as I would have wanted. I was expecting maybe more of like a Hot Fuzz type of madness that just exploded and was unstoppable, especially with all the kill them all. I was expecting more of like a Hot Fuzz explosion. But I'll say what we got. Holy crap. Okay, seriously, if you haven't watched Krazy House yet, what I'm about to say, I don't know if you want to hear. Christians, cover your ears. So, Nick Frost finally loses it, pulls himself off of the cross painfully, and then finally attacks the older Russian man, gets him to the ground, and picks up a Jesus statue and decides to sodomize the old Russian man with the Jesus statue, and then says, Jesus is inside you now. Ah! Like, I'm not even religious, and that got me. That broke me. I was like, whoa, just whoa, you know what I mean? And then when the SWAT finally breaks in, and Nick Frost just decides to shoot the SWAT members and to shoot the audience, until we find out the audience has been there this whole time and they're still watching. And it almost reminded me of Dogma. That reminded me of the ending there, or the church sequence where Ben Affleck, Bartholomew, I forget what his angel name is, but where Ben Affleck's character starts killing all the church people who are just waiting to go into church, and it's just this kind of needless carnage against people who really just showed up. They had nothing to do with any of this. But I think it's kind of one of those weird whacks at kind of like Last Action Hero, where you find out, oh, the drama of my life is entertainment for you. Screw you, So I thought that was very interesting, because it almost lended itself to the Stockholm syndrome. Like, wait, did even Nick Frost fall for these people? You know what I mean? Or perhaps did he fall for them from the beginning? We don't know. But all of that was very gnarly. What a gnarly movie. And then to cap it all off with crushing the Russian dad's head with the cross that he himself was nailed to. I was like, whoa. I mean, just images I never expected to see in a movie. At least not a comedy like this. This was, I don't know. I don't know if I can call this movie offensive now, because now that I think about it, it was quite a good ride. I feel like I haven't had this much of a thrill from a movie being shocking and surprising since Hot Fuzz. I thought Edgar Wright's Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and Scott Pilgrim. I felt, to me, I know there's the Cornetto trilogy, but I felt like those three films were like his trilogy of madness, of how crazy and stylized can a movie get while still technically being a movie. You know what I mean? Before it just explodes into just bizarre art. You know, I thought, especially Hot Fuzz was such a perfect movie. And I haven't had a ride where just unusual, unexpected things were happening. Especially with Hot Fuzz, when again, spoilers for Hot Fuzz, which is Nick Frost and the wonderful Simon Pegg. I missed that duo. I really missed that duo. But anyway, spoilers for the ending of that movie. I love when at the end of that movie, it's the old people council who's been the murderers of the town that Simon Pegg's been investigating. And although he's drummed up this entire conspiracy theory that actually makes a lot of logical sense, it turns out they're just killing people because they annoy them. Oh, those crusty jugglers. They don't like circus people. They don't they don't like ugly houses, so they're blowing up ugly houses. All just to kind of maintain the general look and feel of the town. And it was just like, wow, that was such a mind bender of a twist, that it was completely mundane reasons why they were killing people. It was just like hilariously ridiculous. And here in this movie, we get, instead of mundanity, we get madness. The movie is an escape from mundanity by the end. Mundanity, am I saying that right? I don't even know. But when we get to the flashback of the Russian father when he was younger, and the nun, because this movie does begin with this very artistic, beautiful black and white sequence where a nun is, I think she's holding a baby, and then she gets shot. And then we're into some kind of, and then we don't know what happens, and we go to the sitcom reality. So that kind of filmmaking, again, it sets up that we're not going to stay in the sitcom reality. Just the fact that we started in cinema, black and white cinema world, means that we're going to come back to this for some reason, or that we should. And so to connect that story into this flashback at the end, and it turns out that they've been breaking down the walls of the Krazy House because they're looking for a bag of money. Not just a bag of money, but a bag that has his child, abandoned child, in it. And I'm like, well, why didn't you tell the police, or did you? And they didn't listen to you. Why don't you tell the police that there was a baby in the house? That, check everything, check the walls, check something. Or maybe he couldn't. He did get shot. But yeah, I was not expecting that wild, beautiful, personal backstory where it actually did make me like the Russian father, and I was like, in the weirdest kind of way, because it was clear that he was a bad guy, and yet he loved his kid. He just wants his kid to be okay, and that was just like, oh man, you know what I mean? It's like, like, how do you do this to me, movie? How do you get me in this weird spot where I can understand what's going on, I can follow, but wow, this is such a bizarre, again switching film languages, where we go into black and white cinema, Dutch angles, very tight, very personal, very wild looking. For the flashback, it's the film language changes to communicate to you a different time period, and that in this flashback, the Russian guy is the main character. So film language is so important in understanding how movies work and how they affect people. But this was such a deliberate mishmash of film languages to give us a very strange, fun experience. And I do think it did take me an entire day to decide that I really liked this movie and that I, in fact, highly recommend it. Again, for filmmakers, I think you gotta see this movie if you like telling stories. And really look at the high quality of it as well. Even though the sitcom appears to be low quality, it's because it's giving us a dated presentation. This is how sitcoms looked in the 80s and 90s. So it has this very dated appearing presentation. But like I said, the start of the movie is black and white cinematic. And again, once we get to Nick Frost's, the bubbling of his inner character coming out, that's when we go from sitcom to cinema. Cinematic lighting, cinematic presentation, tighter close-ups. It's a dramatic, more scary movie now, more of a thriller. The film language is literally shifting to let you know what's going on, and it might be jarring for some people, and it was jarring, but it's not accidental. I think that's the most important thing. This was not a movie figured out in the editing room. They had a vision. The directors, Steve and Flip, I believe, were their names. They really had a vision for what they were doing. They achieved it, and I'm just very impressed with the film language handling. Again, if you watched, I think you should watch Tusk and Krazy House. Maybe not not back to back, but if you're a filmmaker, then these are films you should be watching to stretch your mind and get you to understand what your ability is as a storyteller, that you can go anywhere you want to go. And to sit around and want to be pigeonholed or get yourself pigeonholed, that to me is the death of the artist in you. If you want to be a true artist, if you want to be a true filmmaker, if you want to achieve things, that if you have an ambitious vision for yourself, then you got to push it. You've got to push it as far as you possibly can within your abilities or within your interests. And these guys clearly had a very ambitious interest to tackle the sitcom style while still giving us a kind of gnarly horror thriller type of movie. And then we got the bubblegum baby. Holy crap, there's a bubblegum baby. I'm grateful that it was not shaped in the form of a baby. That was more like symbolically like the mold of how it's supposed to look when you're holding a baby, but it's not actually anything with hands or arms or eyes. I think that might have been too far for me, because that's what I thought I was going to get. Thankfully, it was just a giant peanut of gum, and I was like, okay, that's cool. I'll take the peanut of gum. And then if you stick through the credits and you see the family come back together, including the one Russian person that they didn't kill because he is the father of the bubblegum baby. Oh, wow. I love that when the daughter says she's pregnant, that the Russian son who was sleeping with her says that's impossible. But if you go back to the scene where Nick Frost opens her door and finds them having sex, they both have their underwear on. So it's almost like, are you just dry humping? Are you just simulating? And it made me feel like, oh, is it literally impossible that she's pregnant from you? I was like, wow. In retrospect and really collecting my thoughts about this movie, I think I really love it. I think it's an incredible piece of creativity. It's got a fun spirit to it. I think it's a great, really well made movie. I think it's a great movie. Again, we're not talking Godfather, but in terms of, hey, the filmmaker went out and did what they wanted to do. On those terms, great job, great movie, great filmmakers. Again, the handling of film language tells you everything about the strength of the director. And I think if you watch the Talkville show, they just did a couple weeks ago at the time of this recording. They just did the 100th episode, Reckoning, which features the death of Jonathan Kent, portrayed by John Snyder. Very emotional episode, one of my favorites. And they interview Greg Beeman, and they talk a bit about how Greg Beeman shoots and how he makes these very, very careful choices about what he shoots. All of that is, again, signs of competency as a director. If you really know what you need and you go out and just get that, then that makes you a stronger director than the next guy who maybe overshoots because he or she or they is not sure where the scene is going to go, which doesn't necessarily make you less of a director in the creative sense, but in terms of production, in terms of how the time is spent, it all shows up in the editing room. And Greg Beeman talked about in this 100th episode how he knew how it would be edited. He knew he can envision how his shots will be cut together. And if you look at Tim Burton's work, when Algo and Mike Millar are talking about working with Tim Burton on the Tim Burton directed episodes of Wednesday, they talk very similarly about the economy of storytelling, that every shot chosen, even if it seems wild, even if it seems like time is being spent too much here and not enough there, or vice versa, or whatever, the economy of storytelling, really picking your shots that will, once you get into that editing room, it's all going to line up. And that is what good directing's about. That's what I've studied from the great directors, or at least my great directors, Guillermo del Toro, Sam Raimi, Christopher Nolan, Kevin Smith, all of them. That control over knowing what you want to shoot, how you want to shoot it, having that good sense of how to run your production, that really shows how you're not wasting anybody's time because you know what you want and you're going for it. And again, it all comes together in the editing bay. Whether you need a couple more shots, I mean, that happens no matter what you do. But all in all, if you can keep it down and really know what you're doing, that is the mark of your competency as a director of a production. Not just creatively, but how you're not wasting anybody's time. And so on that regard, really looking at the control of the cinema style, and I mean, obviously I can't judge the production because I only have this Q&A to go off of, but it's very clear that from Nick Frost, the way he talked about them, that it's clear that these guys knew what they were doing and knew what they wanted to do. And they've already made another movie. In the time of me watching this Q&A and watching this movie, and during the Q&A, they discussed, we're already coming out with a new movie called Getaway, which comes out at the end of this year, which I'm so excited to see. It's all there. I think the strength of the filmmaking is so important to pay attention to when it comes to everything. But again, especially for you young filmmakers out there or people thinking about getting into movies, that's the kind of stuff you want to pay attention to. How does the director control their film language? How does the director shoot? Are you getting lots and lots of angles and footage or not? You know what I mean? Everyone does things differently. No one's going to tell Sergio Leone that he shouldn't have gotten 600 shots of everyone's close-ups and everyone's hands as they were reaching for guns, because that's the way Sergio Leone was great at making his own art when it came to the Man with No Name trilogy. So every director is different. But that's just something to think about in terms of being a functional production director. Of course, I'm just talking about this off the cuff because I've only made 007 I Only Need One so far, but I've made also a few more shorts and goofy things. And I'll tell you, we did not waste any time making those videos. I knew what shots I wanted, how to shoot them in the best, quickest, most effective way. And if I got my take, I got my take, and I moved on. That's how I studied before I went to Academy of Art, and that's absolutely what Academy of Art got me into understanding. So there's a lot of weight and importance to for a young filmmaker, if you don't know what to do, to paying attention to stuff like that. Look for interviews where filmmakers talk about what they do. It's crucial. And as an audience member, the way a filmmaker really knows what they're doing is is exactly the same thing. It's like, are we bouncing between genres? Is it well handled? And I think editing has a lot to do with it too. Where there's a quote, I forget who said it, but there was someone asked, "How do you know the difference between a good director and a bad director?" And the answer was the editor. And I thought that was so true. It's like the editing. If the editing communicates what the director was going for, or communicates the story at all, it shows you that the story was in the footage. And bad editing can kill maybe a potentially great director's video. I've seen it before, and good editing can make better a well enough directed video. So, and I've done that before, and perhaps all of my work that I've done is that. But either way, it's just stuff to pay attention to. It's what I look for. It's what I learn from. And again, this is a gut reaction, so I don't really have anything but the Q&A to go off of. But I just gotta say, I'm so impressed with this movie. I mean, I'm still traumatized in a good way by it. But all things being said, I think it's a very well-made movie. I don't think it's for everybody. I think, like Tusk, I'm not recommending this to everybody. But like Tusk, I think for those who love it, you'll love it. And for those who don't want that kind of crazy, weird experience, it's probably not for you. But I think, yeah, in a technical term, I think it's solid. I think it's much more solidly edited than I think Joker Folie à Deux. I think, although I liked Joker Folie à Deux a lot, maybe loved it, Krazy House was legitimately crazy. I mean, it's all the madness that I really wanted but also didn't want. You know what I mean? It's just pure madness as a movie, almost to the point of like Evil Dead, just in terms of how bizarre things are. It's not even the extreme shock value of any particular incident, except for Jesus being inside the Russian guy, but just the bizarre things that happen as they get increasingly weird across the movie. It may not be for everybody, but it worked for me. But again, it took me a whole day to come to terms with what I watched and accept it as, and recognize how great it actually is. So, hats off, way to go, cast and crew for Krazy House. Nick Frost was great. I can't wait to see Getaway. That two-hander of Hot Fuzz. I mean, Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, both great talents. I hope they come back together again. But in terms of just seeing a great Nick Frost movie, this is absolutely it. I can't wait to see Getaway later this year and see if it's see what it's going to be like. Is it going to be more straightforward, or will they continue some of their more bizarre filmmaking choices? Not bad, just not normal, not usual, and I like that. Test the boundaries, push your genre, push your movie as far as you can possibly push it per your own taste and per the storytelling limits of your story. That's what I'm interested in. That's what I like. So that being said, great job, cast and crew. Thank you for watching. And yeah, go check out Tusk, because it's good for you. But if you don't like it, I am sorry. All right, Krazy House. Love it.